Hello and welcome to One. I am Priscilla Nwikpo. I'm joined by a political economist, a lawyer, and a former United Nations official, as well as a former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, who has recently thrown his hat into the Nigerian presidential race. He is arguably the most prepared candidate of the new wave of hopefuls, Professor Kingsley Moghalu. Welcome to One. Good day, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Priscilla.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you for this time. I mean, as I've made mention there, you're probably the most prepared of them all. You've been in the system as the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Yes. You also have a book that you've written,
yes.
Build, Innovate, and Grow. Big.
Yes.
And that is effectively your manifesto.
Yes.
So I'm going to, leadership, economy, and so on, very important to you. But let us start with the key question of why did you want to run for the president of Nigeria?
Well, I've been a Nigerian citizen for 55 years. I have seen for decades that the ordinary man or woman in Nigeria just doesn't matter to Nigeria's politicians.
Okay.
I have seen poverty on the rise. Over the past 60 years, Nigeria has gotten poorer and poorer and poorer. Again, that is an affliction of the common man, the average man or woman in Nigeria. And it is for this common man and woman that I am in the presidential race.
Right.
Because for too long, they haven't mattered. But for once, in 2019, we want the people to win. The politicians have always won. But in 2019, the people will win.
You say that Nigerians have not mattered. I want to take you back on that very quickly.
Yeah.
How are you going to make them feel that they matter?
The purpose of leadership is to lead people, political leadership especially. The purpose of politics in Nigeria is simply to win political power for the politicians.
But they all say that,
no,
they are
here's
there
the
to
difference.
lead.
Here's the difference, that when I become president in 2019,
right,
we have a plan which is very different from the promises you always hear politicians making on the soapbox. That plan is contained in the book you've just referred to, Build, Innovate, and Grow. So you can hold me to account.
Okay.
You can hold me accountable. I'm not going to run away from the plans I've set out, the vision I have set out in that book. When you're pushed by a vision, it's very different from when you're being pushed just by an ambition.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the plan, I'm going to come to that plan
Absolutely.
in just a moment.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take you back again.
Sure.
How are you going to make Nigerians feel that they are, that they matter?
They matter.
Yeah. Or that they are included.
Exactly. I am going to run an inclusive governance. An inclusive government that includes...
Everybody says that.
That's what they say.
I want the reality.
Yeah, but that's the reality. The reality is in my track record.
Okay.
The reality is in everything I've always done. I was deputy governor in the Central Bank. If you go and ask people who worked with me in the Central Bank, they'll tell you that Kingsley Moghalu is not somebody who's interested in your tribe, is not interested in your religion. He's interested in you as a person. He's interested in making you a better officer.
So how would you do that? Let's break it down.
Let's break it down.
Yeah, let's make it literal to, the average.
As I'm being sworn in as president, we are announcing the top 3 positions of the presidency. That is the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the National Security Advisor, and the Chief of Staff to the President. All 3 will come from 3 different geopolitical zones.
Okay.
In Buhari's presidency, all 3 have come from 1 geopolitical zone. So that's inclusion versus exclusion.
That's for the political class.
Yes. In
what
terms
about
of the
inclusion
people,
for the ordinary man?
The ordinary man, we are going to include them in governance through direct communication to the people. I am going to be the first president of Nigeria who will speak directly to the Nigerian people, not from London, not from Germany, but face-to-face, one-on-one at town halls across the 6 geopolitical zones.
Okay.
That is what I will do. And we'll be listening to Nigerians and we'll be explaining our vision to them one-on-one across the 6 geopolitical zones. I'm going to be the people's president.
Okay. Leadership was something that you made mention of earlier, and it's something that I know that is very dear to your heart.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned the fact in your book that Nigeria has been led by rulers,
exactly,
as opposed to leaders.
Exactly.
So how are you going to change that from having rulers, most especially making an ordinary Nigerian feel that they're being led and not being ruled, for instance?
It is by direct engagement, as I've explained to you.
Right.
A leader is someone who must communicate to his people or her people, and you must listen to them. It's a two-way conversation. You must hold conversations, and that is what I'm going to be doing as president. Through town halls, through the electronic media, through the digital media, we will be communicating to the Nigerian people and listening to them. I believe very much that the most powerful office in Nigeria is not the office of the president, it is the office of the citizen.
Okay.
Yeah.
You made mention of the book being your manifesto,
Build, innovate, and
being
grow.
your plan and all of that for Nigeria.
Absolutely.
But one thing Nigeria is not lacking is a good plan. You will agree with me. There are plans, the former, not the present, but the former administration, for instance, had a new industrial plan for Nigeria. The then Minister for Finance also had a plan for our economy and so on. So, we have these plans all over the place.
Yes.
And here you are, your book is here, and it's yet another plan for Nigeria. Tell me what you're going to do differently to what everybody else has done to date.
There is a difference. Let me tell you where the problem begins. The problem begins when you only develop plans.
Right.
When there is no vision behind the plan.
We had Vision 2020 during the Jonathan administration.
That's a document.
But you would have to write down your vision. You can't keep it to yourself. You have to communicate it to the people.
That's true. That's true. We have had a lot of documents.
Right.
But we haven't had leaders who showed themselves to be visionary in their own personal communication and in their own leadership style.
But
anybody can gather a group of technical people to write him a plan. I'm trying to answer your question, and you must allow me answer it.
My apologies.
Yeah, so the problem with all these so-called plans and visions is that there was no real philosophy behind them. There was no worldview behind them. There was no worldview of transformation. How do you take a society from A to B to C to Z over a period of time? That comes from thinking, not just a plan. When you think and you have a philosophical foundation, I want my country to be a successful capitalist economy, for example. So that is your philosophical foundation. You have a worldview that says, we are coming from here as a country. We are going to this destination as a country over this period of time, and here's my role as the leader, and here are the roles of the citizens, and here is how I and the citizens will communicate to each other what we both need to do to arrive at the destination we're going. Now that's called a worldview. So when you start from this foundation and you then document a strategy, then it's more likely to work. But in addition, what I will do as president is that I'm going to establish 4 offices that will their duty is to make sure that the plan is executed.
So bear with me.
Sure.
I need to go back to this worldview thing.
Oh, it's very foundational.
Because it's important, and it's important to Nigerians.
Yes.
The reason why I say that is because the Jonathan administration was renowned for having, if you like, the A-stars of Nigerians from around the world. I recall the then former UN Director General, Dr. Kande Yomkele, referring to them as, the A-stars of any government, and he was looking forward to them driving Nigeria forward. So when you say there's no worldview, these were individuals who were very good at, their various roles and where they were, and indeed continue to do so on the world stage.
Let me explain.
So is it sufficient to say that they did not have a worldview?
It is.
And therefore their plans were not good enough?
The reason you brought, and this is one of the reasons I'm running for president.
Help me.
Yes. The leader is the person who matters most.
No, those around him.
No.
I thought it was him being a good administrator.
If you bring good people around you, but you yourself as a leader lack a very clear worldview, you lack a determination, you cannot succeed, because you will be succumbing, as has always happened, to vested interests that are playing behind your back, many of who don't hold any ministerial portfolio. Those vested interests may come from your village. Those vested interests may come from the oil industry. Those vested interests may come from the banks. So they are the ones who are the real powers behind the throne at night. I've been in government. Listen to me. I know what I'm saying. So it was my being a top technocrat and seeing that it doesn't matter what brilliant ideas you have. If this country, if you're serving under corrupt and soulless politicians, this country cannot, our country cannot be transformed. But that is why I am offering myself as a leader with a worldview. So when I bring competent people around me, they are not singing at a different hymn sheet. So it's not they are bringing bright ideas and I'm undermining them because I'm playing to a political vested interest.
We need to go for a very short break, but please join us in a few moments when once again I'll be speaking with Professor Kingsley Moghalu. To One with me, Priscilla Nwigbo, where I am still joined by Professor Kingsley Moghalu, who has announced his desire to run for the president of Nigeria in the 2019 elections. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
Just before we went on the break there, you spoke about the challenges that you have, especially if you're working and you have, corrupt politicians around you.
Yeah.
Now, the Nigerian system is designed in such a way that we have the executive, we have the judiciary, and we also have the lawmakers, as it were. Now, tell me this. You've only just spoken about the executive, and you would have great people around you, but you can't do very much about the crop of people that will be in the judiciary, for instance, or that are going to also be in the National Assembly. So would there not be corruption there that could impact you?
Of course. Let me first of all tell you that anybody who tells you that he or she is going to wipe out corruption in Nigeria overnight is deceiving you. So please, let's manage our expectations. There are no messiahs coming to save us. It's you and me and every Nigerian that's going to have to work together, taking the daily steps to make our country a better place. Now, the National Assembly is an independent organ of the government, so is the judiciary. But I want you to understand that in a presidential system of government, the person who is the president and his leadership ability or his vision or her vision, assuming he or she has one, is what matters most. As president, I would sit down the president of the Senate and the speaker and say, here is the vision. You and I have a common vested interest in this vision working. You from the legislative part, me from the executive part. If Nigeria works, we all take credit. The people of Nigeria will take credit, you in the legislature will take credit, I will take credit. Leadership means the ability to engage.
Right.
And you need to be able, the current president does not engage. He's aloof, doesn't talk to anyone, talks to us from London or Germany. But
he's spoken to us from Nigeria before.
Well, maybe early in his tenure, but in the past 2 years, how often has he really spoken to you from Nigeria, other than just reading you an address on television? So I think that the National Assembly, which has not lived up to its promise quite clearly, can be made to do much better.
So now let me do this. You've written a great book, clear plans for what you want to do. And as I've said, it's not about the plan.
Yeah.
Let's look at what's on the ground.
Sure.
The issue on the ground, the most recent one I can point to is the resignation of the Minister for Finance. And her resignation has sprung up a lot of conversations and discussion around the area of forgery.
Yeah.
And that is the bane of the society. And we see that right across. Yeah. So your plans are great. But how would you make things work on the ground at that level for the ordinary man?
Yeah. Corruption is a big problem in Nigeria. And that means that the systems in Nigerian governance are corrupted. You can give people money, they can give you something false. The first place you begin is by setting a leadership tone of accountability. We have not found it in this government. Despite all the noise they've made about fighting corruption, several people were accused of corrupt practices in this government, and all that the president does is try to shield them or to hide from those allegations. In the case of the finance minister, it got too much, and because of her role, you know that there are international dimensions to being a minister of finance. You represent Nigeria in the IMF and the World Bank and things like that. So obviously, eventually, the government had to react, but reluctantly.
Right.
For me, as president, I will begin the fight against corruption inside my own government. Okay. If there is a report against any member of my government having a forged certificate, I will quickly take action and ask for a resignation. You see, if the president does this often enough, you will kill the incentive for people to go and bring forged certificates, because people will know that the leader does not tolerate this type of thing.
Let's go back to my question, because that's still unanswered. And that is the issue on the ground.
Yes.
You know, Mrs. Adeosun will say, it wasn't my fault.
Sure.
And it's the system's fault. Yeah. How do we deal with that system?
By appointing the right kinds of people into the systems. There are many public offices in this country that are peopled and staffed with political jobbers. That's not what I will do as president. And this is what causes the problem. If you appoint people not on the basis of competence, but on the basis of maybe their political or ethnic or religious loyalties, their focus is not to prevent these types of frauds.
How will you get the public to buy into? Because, you know, it's one thing appointing the right people into office, and it's another thing having the public to work with you. As it is, Nigeria is, you know, extremely divided.
I know.
How would you be able to sell your vision to the ordinary Nigerian, I don't know,
Let me tell you,
northern parts?
I am already selling my vision. The worst enemy we have is this mindset that nothing can change in Nigeria.
Right.
Or that making Nigeria a better country is an impossible task. It is not an impossible task. We need to open our minds to the reality that human beings establish realities. The realities we have on ground today were created by all of us. If we decide to create a different type of reality, we will create it.
You speak about policy inconsistencies,
yes,
not just in Nigeria, but also around the world in your book. Tell me very quickly, one of the biggest policy inconsistent document we have is the Constitution. I mean, it's been a challenge to try and get a change, to get the right kind of change.
That's right.
How do you plan to overcome that task of changing the Constitution and making it workable for the ordinary Nigerian?
Well, the Constitution we have today is not really a people's constitution. It was a constitution made essentially by the military and forced down our throat. As president, I am going to initiate working with the National Assembly, which has the authority to change the Constitution, working with the National Assembly to constitutionally restructure Nigeria and reposition Nigeria, including with a new people's constitution.
Right. Will you be inviting Nigerians to submit areas that they would like to make changes? Of course we will.
That's part of that inclusive governance, that we will listen to Nigerians on what they want in a new constitution.
Right. 35% affirmative all over the world. How are you going to make that happen? Time is not on my side, but I'm a woman. I can't ignore that.
My vision is that women as partners, WAP, women as partners. There will be 50-50 gender parity in my administration.
50-50.
That's the target. That's
now,
the target.
I must ask this question, Pat.
Yes.
You had agreed, and then the vote didn't go your way.
Yes.
And you changed your mind and continued to run.
Well,
how can we trust you? How can Nigerians trust you on
You
this?
should trust me precisely because I changed my mind. And let me tell you why I changed my mind. You see, because the story of PACT is presented in a very simplistic way. PACT was supposed to be a group of young aspirants getting together and deciding amongst us who was the strongest candidate, most likely to win the election if we all come around and back the person. Everyone in it knew who the strongest person in the room was. Without intending to sound immodest, it's me.
Okay.
For many reasons. I am the most experienced of all of them. I am the most accomplished in terms of public service and in terms of a track record that can be cross-checked. The presidency of Nigeria needs someone who has experience. But more importantly, is that the process of PACT itself became fundamentally flawed. Some people hijacked it, refused for us to wait until the primaries so that it is people who have gone through the primaries and are candidates of their parties, that from there we now choose the consensus candidate. They ignored this advice and railroaded the process.
So why did you attend?
Wait. I did it out of respect to the youth of this country. Now, in a normal election, people run for elections all the way to the voting.
Right.
And if they feel that the voting outcome was obtained through a flawed process, what do? They reject the results and go to court. Does it not happen every day in Nigeria?
It does.
Fine. So the fact that I participated all the way to the end does not mean that if the outcome was obtained through a flawed process, I should now become a prisoner of my good intentions.
Now, you talk about Nigeria being a rudderless society.
Yes.
What would you do as Mr. President to give it more focus?
Absolutely.
To make it have rudder?
Yeah.
And this is my final question to you.
Well, that's the first job, and that is to set the foundational national philosophy that will guide our country going forward. That's anchored on three things. Number one, to heal Nigeria and build a real nation. We're a country, we're not a nation. So I'll have to set out a national ambition that I believe Nigerians will agree with and will unite us above whether we're Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, Christian or Muslim. We have to have a national ambition around which we unite. Also, war against poverty. Again, WAP, W-A-P. It's going to be a critical issue in my administration. War against poverty, women as partners, war against prejudice. It's all WAP, WAP, WAP. Now, war against poverty. Nigeria has become the poverty capital of this world, and this is why I'm running for president, to take more of our poor people out of poverty into the middle class in a structured way that we can measure, and I have the economic knowledge. Nation building, I have the United Nations experience. Okay. Third, to restore Nigeria's standing in the world. That means international diplomacy. Again, I have the experience, and that is why I say I am very well prepared for this job.
Well, Professor Moghalu, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
That's all we have time for, I'm afraid. I'm Priscilla Nwikpo. Please join us next time on One to One.